Well, welcome back. Welcome back to Extraordinary Drummer Show. As you know, I'm your host, Cheron Moore. I tell you, I told one other drummer, I've made full circle. Well, today I've made that loop again. Got a good friend on the show. He actually is a legend. I don't know if he feels that way, but he's actually a legend. And we all know him, love him. He's responsible for so many drummers' careers. I tell you, many of us wanted to just fall at his feet and tell him our problems and our stories and our life. And he's been everywhere. I mean, I'm really building this up because it's true. He's seen it all. My dear friend, we remember him from the company Promart Stick Company. Will you say hello to my dear friend, Pat Brown? Hey, Pat.
Man, I can't possibly live up to that, but thank you.
I was trying to piece together an intro that wouldn't be too long and too saucy.
Well, you're very, very, very kind. I don't. Boy, that's awfully kind. That's all I can tell you.
Oh, if you only knew, man. If you only knew. How you doing, buddy?
I can't complain, man. Nobody listens. You know how it is.
You look good, man. I tell you.
Well, you know, there's a few more gray hairs and a few less of them to get gray, but other than that.
I think you found that fountain of youth down there in Houston, huh?
Hey, you know something, a day spent in an airplane is not deducted from your lifespan. That's what I think.
Thank you for being on the Extraordinary Drummer Show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having this beat up old pilot.
You're never beat up. I can see you beating on something, but never beat up. Let me ask you this. How are you enjoying retirement?
Retirement?
Remember that word?
You asked my wife if I'm retired. I've got two jobs, and they're two of the best jobs in the world. One is with the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, and so I get a chance to travel all over promoting aviation and aviation safety. And pre-COVID, it was not uncommon for me to be standing in a room with, 200 or 300 pilots doing some sort of a safety seminar or something like that on aviation safety.
How did you get started flying?
I can remember being 3 or 4 years old and being fascinated by airplanes, and my mom would buy me these little tiny plastic airplanes you could get at the local dime store, and I'd put a string on the wing and just whip them around my head like that, and was just fascinated with it. I'm just barely old enough. I say that with a wink and a nod. I'm just barely old enough to remember the Mercury space program, and I can remember. I don't know, I was probably in first or second grade maybe, when Alan Shepard got shot off into space for the suborbital flight. And the teachers, got all the kids and rounded us up and took us into the all-purpose room. And there was this grainy black and white TV on a stand with rabbit ear antennas. And we all got to watch Alan Shepard get shot into space, and John Glenn after that. And it was just something about that. Something about it, just I don't know.
Do you remember, after all the years over at Promart, which we're going to talk about if it's okay, do you remember the first day getting back into a plane? What was that like? Were you?
Well, I had laid off for about 6 years. We just moved to Houston. Starting a new job, the family was young, house payment, car payment, just like everybody else. At some point, something has to give, and aviation kind of slid into the background. 6 or 7, 8 years maybe after that happened, a friend of mine who is a pilot, a drummer as a matter of fact, who is a pilot, invited me to go for an airplane ride, and it was like just like rediscovering how much I love that. That first return flight was in 1995, I believe, and I haven't looked back.
When you walked up to the plane and you got behind the steering wheel, were you kind of nervous, kind of scared a little bit to take? Now, this is not like a taxi or a train. You can really go way up in the air here.
Well, it's called a yoke, not a steering wheel, but that's okay.
Okay, I didn't know. A yoke, okay.
I climbed on into the left seat, and there was a flight instructor in the right seat next to me. This is before I had my flight instructor certificate or anything like that. And You know, he talked me through getting the engine started, and we took off and flew around for a bit and came back and landed. I landed the airplane. I hadn't landed an airplane in, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years, whatever it was. He didn't have to touch the controls. It wasn't a pretty landing, but we walked away from it and didn't damage the airplane. So there's two types of landing, Cheron. A good landing is a landing that you walk away from. A great landing is a landing where you can use the airplane again.
And I think of you teaching how to fly the students. Are you more nervous than the students when they get behind the?
Well, in 26 years, I think I've been teaching now. I've only been outright scared maybe once or twice, and I took control of the airplane to fix it. But for the most part, I've had students try to kill me in about every way possible, and so far, still here.
Well, you are a musician, but I was confused. Was it bass player or drummer or guitar? Because I've seen pictures of you on bass. Was it bass?
Yeah. Well, you know, 4 strings, 4 fingers. What can go wrong? The math works. The math works.
So were you a bass player or a drummer? Are you a bass player or a drummer?
I'm a bass player. I tell people that I play bass for money and drums for fun. And that's really true. If somebody's going to hire me to go on the bandstand, they're not going to hire me for my drumming ability. I'm a fair bass player.
How did the bass playing turn to ProMark? How did the bass player turn to the product world?
My sister-in-law lived here in Houston. I knew ProMark was in Houston, so I reached out to Herb Brockstein, who was the founder of ProMark, and just said, I'm coming to Houston. I'd love to meet you and just meet you. And so he was kind enough to say yes. And we got down here, and as soon as we got settled, I called him up. He said, yeah, come on down for a tour. They were just at that point starting to buy some lathes and begin to make drumsticks in Houston. Before that, they had been importing all of their sticks from Japan or Taiwan. And that's where the Japanese oak sticks came from, and still too, I guess. But ProMark was basically an import company at that time. Just starting to make hickory sticks. And Herb was so nice to me, and he said, I don't have anything right now, but stay in touch. And, if something comes up, let's talk again. And I stayed in touch with him for 3 years while I was doing a job that was outside the music industry and absolutely miserable. And he called me one day and he said, you remember Joe Hibbs?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Joe was my predecessor at ProMark before he went to Mapex and along through his career. He said, Joe's leaving to take a job. Actually, I think with Tama is who he took the first job with. He says, well, I need a director of sales and marketing. You interested? And I said, when do you want me to start? And so on January the 2nd, January the 2nd, 1985, I started at ProMark and stayed there for the next almost 28 years. And did a variety of things. Started out basically as the director of sales and artist relations.
I gotta tell you though, Herb was one of the nicest guys in the world. Let me tell you the story of how I came about. I started with Zildjian sticks, but I never was a Zildjian cymbal kind of a guy, And when I heard a Sabian cymbal, I was like, whoa. So I met Remo, the guy over at Remo, and Vic Firth at GIT school here in LA.
Yeah.
And I was telling him the problem I'm having with my sticks, with the Zildjian sticks. and Vic Firth invited me to the company, and I took the endorsement. And I remember walking through NAMM, and I saw the sign ProMark. Vader hadn't even came around yet. And I remember going over to, telling a quick story about Herb. I remember going over to the booth. Herb, classy. He knew who I was. He came out with this tray. He brought the silver tray out with sodas and stuff on it. and walked over to me and offered the drink and sat down, told me the Elvis Presley stories and all this different stuff, man.
I thought about that one for a while.
He said, talked about this drum head had the fuzz on it or whatever.
Oh yeah, it was an unshaven calf skin head is what that was.
Yeah, he told me that story, and he said, "So, are you going to come aboard with us?" And I really did like it at ProMark. I really did like it at ProMark. That was the last stick company I ever. Just after I retired, that was it. I really did enjoy. Anyway, I want to tell you my story about Herb. Just that he was a classy dude, man. Are you still in touch with his son? What's his?
Maury is in Colorado, and I would say a couple of times a year we'll exchange texts, just kind of checking in to say how y'all, how's everybody.
And are you still in touch with any of the drummers?
Oh gosh, yes. Gosh.
Oh really?
Yeah. We about 6 months ago or so, Nick Mason came through town. Nick, for some people may not realize, is the founding drummer for Pink Floyd.
Do you ever miss it, Pat? Do you ever miss the industry?
You are the second person that's asked me that in the last couple of weeks.
I was going to say hours.
I was, long story, but, the answer is yes and no. What I miss is the daily interaction with guys like you. I do miss that. There was always something that I always look forward to going. There was rarely a time that I didn't look forward to going to work. I have been very, very fortunate in my career. For 27 years, I worked for ProMark, and I'll tell you, my worst day was better than most people's best day in that job. And I can honestly say there was never a time that I didn't look forward to going to work, much like what I'm doing now.
Would you ever come back, and what would it take for you to come back?
No, you don't have
That's the interview.
I know that's a serious question, so it deserves a serious answer, although that was a serious answer. They say you can't go home again. I think I said this earlier. A number of years ago, when I was still at ProMark, I got a call from Fender, and it was from a guy that I had worked for when I worked at Fender at the guitar string factory, and he wanted me to come to Chula Vista, California, and take over the guitar string factory that I had worked at for so many years when it was in Battle Creek. And, I thought about it for about a minute and a half, and I just thought, something that's actually going backwards. And they offered me an obscene amount of money for the time. At least for me, it was an obscene amount of money, but it was going backwards. And it would be the same. It would be the same here. And some of it is just from a practical standpoint. A lot happens in 7 years. This industry is not anywhere near what it was 7 years ago. The consolidations continue. The challenges with China and offshore production, the race to the bottom in terms of pricing. A lot of that stuff is the same, but this industry isn't anywhere near what it was just 7 years ago, and it's light years away from where it was in 1975 when I joined Fender, in 1985 when I joined ProMark. To be honest with you, I don't know that I would be relevant in today's industry. That's just the hard fact of the matter. I would feel in some ways I would feel like a dinosaur if somebody were kind enough to come and offer me an outsized amount of money to come back. Even then, I would probably say no. I'm 68 years old. I don't feel it. I don't believe I think like it. I damn well know I don't act like it. Just ask my wife. So, but at the same time, to everything turn. There is a season, turn. And my time in this industry I had my time in this industry. I loved it. I can't imagine doing anything else with my life. I don't have 1 second's worth of regret.
What do you think of today's drummers?
I got to tell you, Cheron, I haven't listened to the radio on any kind of regular basis probably since I left ProMark.
Would you ever visit NAM again? Would you ever come down to NAM, let us see you and give you a
Oh,
big
yeah,
hug?
you know, I'd love to. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to come back to NAM. You know, the issue really has been just timing more than anything. The job that I'm doing now with the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association keeps me really pretty busy. As a designated pilot examiner, you know, I fly with numerous applicants for pilot certificates of various grades every week. And it really is just a matter of deciding, you know, something, I'm just going to take a week off and I'm going to book a room and I'm going to come out to NAM and see if I can find somebody to give me a pass. But it would be, you know, it would be fun. It would be fun to walk around and, you know, just, you know, off the top of my head, say hi to the, you know, to, and you know, those kind of guys. It's, you know, one of the first names that comes from the top of my head. But again, you know, 7 years is a long time to be gone.
We have this thing on the show we call Word of Advice, where we ask the guests if they would leave the up-and-coming drummers that are trying to get some traction in their career, or even some of the established guys that's trying to get to the next level, if they ever give them a word of advice.
Wow. Don't sell out. Probably. You know, don't take the gig just because it helps you pay the bills. I mean, you may have to, but don't be true to yourself. Don't sell out. I mean, I know that sounds like it's a cliche, but you know, do what you love and do it with conviction, and just don't sell out. I don't know what else. I don't know how else to put that. You know.
Pat, my last question. You got to say yes to this one, okay? There's no no's on this question. Would you ever do a book? You got to do a book, Pat. You got to leave it with us, man. Wow, what stories. I still have a whole lot of questions here, but I know we're way over time, and I thank you for that. Would you ever do a book?
You know, honestly, I would have to really sit down and kind of go back to the very beginning and actually start writing some things down, because you know, several of the stories that I told you today I'd forgotten about, and you know, I don't talk about much of this stuff anymore, because you know, when I'm sitting, most of the people that I'm around most of the time these days are pilots. Very few of them are musicians, and so I have to be careful, you know, what I say. And I've known them for years, and they're all good friends, but I still have to be kind of a little bit careful about what I say, because you know, I might have been talking to let's say my fellow artist relations guy at Remo some years ago, and oh, I talked to Phil Collins last week, and you know, blah 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 blah. Oh yeah, I talked to Phil too, and blah blah blah. You know, so well, I can't say just out of the blue in a bunch of non-musicians, oh, by the way, I talked to Phil Collins last week. Oh, you're dropping names again, are you? You know, so a lot of those stories I've forgotten about, and it's when I get in a conversation with you or somebody like you that oh God, I remember that time I was having dinner with Elvin Jones, you know, and it was just my wife and me and Elvin and Keiko, just the four of us, you know, and here I'm this, you know, this schluppy bass player from a small town of 7,000 people in southern Lower Michigan having dinner with Elvin Jones, arguably the most legendary of legendary drummers, right, in that genre of music. And people would give their left testicle to be sitting in here, and I'm not even a drummer. you know, and it's stories like that I think about when I get a trigger. But man, I'd have to go back and just look through all the pictures and everything, and I remember. Oh yeah, well maybe one day I'll write something down for the grandkids.
Oh, that'll be great. Thank you so much for being on the Extraordinary Drummer Show.
Well, thanks, man. I'm not an extraordinary drummer. I'm just an average bassist. But hey, thank you for asking me.
I think I said this to, I said, I think you guys understand drummers more than drummers.
Well, I never told anybody that I was a drummer. A lot of people assumed. I never told them I wasn't, but I never told them I was. And I listened and I learned and I got to know the product and I studied, and I could sit down and play a passable paradiddle, not Buddy Rich speed, but I could still can sit down and play a passable flam accent or flamadiddle or something like that. But I never pretended to be a drummer, but I never went out of the way to say I'm not, because I just there was no reason. Relationships were always built on service and eventually being friends. And sooner or later it came out that actually I'm a bass player. But there's that camaraderie between drummers and bass players. And so, it never mattered. But anyway, I always, and I'll tell you one other funny story, or it's not funny, but I'll tell you one other story, ironic perhaps is the thing. I guess I was 12, maybe 11 or 12 years old when the Beatles played Ed Sullivan for the first time. And I remember watching them and watching all the girls screaming and thinking, I got to do that. So at the time, I really wanted to play drums because Ringo's just up there doing this like this, and he's just looking like he's having so much fun. Like, I can't believe I'm here, right? You can beat that, but that, sorry. Anyway, I thought I got to do that. And then I started thinking, well, my mom will never let me play the drums. They're too loud. So I asked her, and my parents, I asked them if I could learn how to play the guitar. Well, my mom, who was a trained operatic soprano and a wonderful singer who actually understudied at the Metropolitan Opera in New York, that's where the musical talent came from. What little I've got was from her. She said, no, you're going to learn how to play the piano first. Oh, crap. So I took a couple of years of piano lessons, and eventually they let me get a guitar, and then I started playing guitar. But I just think it's funny that all those years later, and I meet Ringo for the first of many times over the years, and who was my inspiration for getting into the industry, or stumbling into this industry anyway, and discovering my love for music. In fact, the very first time I met him, I said, I got to tell you something, Ringo. I said, you've probably heard this a gazillion times. And he says, in his typical accent, I'm sure I have. And with a smile on his face. And I said, but you're the reason I'm doing what I'm doing today. And he said, I'm sorry to hear that. And I said, well, that may be the case, but it was watching you on TV that really set me on the path where I am today, and gave me a career that I have just, had so many experiences with. I can't even begin to tell you. And I don't remember. By that time I was a blubbering idiot. But I don't know how many people get a chance to really tell their heroes face to face what that person means to them. And I know he'd heard that a gazillion times, really. But it just seemed like, ironically, the instrument that I wanted to learn how to play to begin with, I'm meeting the guy that inspired me to want to learn how to play that instrument. And a few years later, they're back in Houston, and my mom was down here visiting, and my dad had passed away a few years before. And so I got some tickets to the show, and we were backstage beforehand, and Ringo's over there, and Jeff Jonas, his drum tech, waves us over. And Monsieur Starkey, how are you? And he says, Monsieur Brown, how are you today? I'm just fine, thanks. Ringo, this is this is my mother, Dottie. Her name is Dottie, Dorothy. Dottie was her nickname. And he just looked at her and looked at her just that Liverpool accent. Hello, Mother Dottie, and she, of course she just melted. But back in the day, my parents thought that the Beatles music was heretic, and long hair, these freaks with the long hair, and you look at the videos now, and their hair wasn't long at all. But so anyway, so the guy that was responsible for getting me where I ended up, had a chance to meet my mother, and it kind of came full circle, and he just charmed her to death. So those are the kind.
Why you got to do the book, Pat? This is why you got to do the book.
Those are the kind of things that when I get to talking to somebody like you, those are the kind of things that those memories come back, and so regrets not a one. When I go back, no, you can't go back home again, and the industry's changed too much. And frankly, I'm not a real big fan of a lot of the music that I do here that's out there. There are some fine singer-songwriters out there. There's some real deals out there, but there's just a lot of trash. Of course, there's always been a lot of trash. And I'm probably turning into my parents at this point, It's like,
turn it down, it's too loud.
What the hell is that? What do they think that is? But I guess, but I think that's kind of the nature of the evolution of things. You get older, and you kind of, the music that you grow up with is implanted so deeply in your DNA that it's hard to realize, hey, there's some music out there today that's actually relevant to today. And I really do try to keep an open mind. I'm not a huge rap fan, but there's some tracks out there that I hear, and if you put me on the spot and had me name one, I couldn't do it. But I can tell you that there are tracks out there that I hear that, wow, there's some serious musical stuff going on here, and some really serious lyrical content, and while it may not be the kind of stuff I would choose to have in the car on a long road trip, wow, that artist has got something to say. And that's true in most genres of music. You can find something where there's validity in most genres of music, but I'm just at a point now where a lot of it just doesn't interest me. So, I listen to, deep tracks on various things on XM, and I've actually started going back and listening to the really old classic country artists, because you don't hear, the Merle Haggards or even the Louvin brothers and, people like that. Just to kind of remember where those roots are. And I listen to a lot of blues and R&B on XM, because I like to go back and listen to some of that older stuff and kind of, how's that informing what's happening in music today? And there's parallels, and you can see where everybody kind of builds on everybody else's work, and some of it's derivative and some of it is evolutionary, and it's all good. But I don't know. I probably way more than what you wanted to.
Pat, what did you? I've already got our closing here. What did you think of me over at ProMark? And be honest, I'm not going to use it on the show, but I get a chance to ask you.
I always thought, this is one of the coolest dudes that I ever met.
Oh, come on, Pat, tell me the truth, man.
No, it is true. I said, you were always a trip. You would come in and you always had a smile on your face. You were always in a good mood. We always had great conversations, and always just so friendly. And you just leave the booth, and I would just always feel better. And you call me on the telephone, and you always say, "Hey, Pat, this is Cheron Moore." Yeah, I know. Your name is Cheron, not Cheron. It's Cheron. So all you need, I don't know but one Cheron. So there's no reason to say Cheron Moore.
I still do that. I call people and I leave a message. I say, hey, this is Cheron. Cheron Moore. They always say, Cheron. Yeah. Wow.
And it just always made me laugh at it, and not laugh at you, not at all.
Yeah, I get it.
It just always brought a smile to my face. And yeah, I know exactly who that is, and I'm going to end up having a fun conversation when I call him back. So you always brought a smile to my face, just as you have today.
Wow. Again, thank you so very much for being on the show. Would you help us wave goodbye to all of the fans? All of the people?
Man, I love you, buddy.
Love you too, man. Take care of yourself.
See ya. Bye now.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.